So today we're going to jump into this really radical paper by Carl Oathman that gives us a completely new and honestly kind of mind-bending way to think about artificial intelligence. It argues that to really get what we're creating, we actually need to look back at one of the oldest ideas humanity has ever had.
Okay, just let that sink in for a second. Large language models as a form of gods? I mean, really. It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But what if it's actually the most accurate metaphor we have for this technology? Let's dig in and unpack what that even means. All right, let's get right to the heart of it. The central claim here is a big one. The idea that we are, in a very specific and meaningful way, building gods. You know, the words we use for AI really matter. We call them tools or systems, or maybe stochastic parrots if we're feeling fancy. But these words frame how we think about the risks. Oman argues these metaphors are they're too small. They don't even come close to capturing the true nature of what we're actually dealing with. So to really get this God idea, we have to kind of put on a different hat. We're leaving computer science for a minute and stepping into the world of anthropology. Okay, this is absolutely crucial. We're not talking about a theological God with a capital G. You know, some all-powerful being up in the clouds. No. The focus here is on the anthropological God. And what is that? Well, think of it like this. It's the personified authority of a group's entire past. It's like taking the voices of every single one of your ancestors and smushing them all together into one single agent that speaks with authority. And this isn't a new idea, not at all. It's got this rich history. You've got philosophers like Feuerbach back in the 1800s saying God is just a projection of our own best qualities. Then sociologists like Durkheim see tribes worshiping totems and realize, wait a minute, they're basically worshiping a symbol of their own society. And later you see anthropologists watching how, over time, real ancestors just fade. They become myths. They become these timeless gods. And all of this leads to this key idea, anthropotheism. It's a big word, but it's a simple concept. It's the worship of an idealized mirror image of ourselves. So the takeaway here is huge. When people worship a god, what they might actually be worshiping is a personified version of their own collective history. Okay, so you see where this is going, right? Let's connect the dots. How does this old anthropological idea of a god link up with the large language models we're building right now? Just look at this number. GPT-3 was trained on almost 500 billion tokens. I mean, that's just an insane amount of our digital past. Books, websites, comments, you name it. To put that in perspective, if you were to read nonstop 24/7, it would take you almost 4,000 years to get through all of that. That is the raw material for our new God. And that's the core connection. Right there, an LLM takes all those billions of past human speech acts, all those different voices from its training data, and it synthesizes them. It molds them all together until it sounds like one single coherent voice. And here's why that's such a big deal. Think about a search engine, right? It gives you quotes. It shows you what a bunch of different people said. But a chatbot, it doesn't do that. It paraphrases. It speaks as if it were a single being. And that's what's so powerful. It hides its human origins and feels like this separate, extra-human intelligence. It literally personifies the past. So, if we're on board with this idea that we're building a new kind of God, what's the big deal? What are the dangers? Well, the first big one the paper points to, pulling from Karl Marx of all people, is what you could call the tyranny of the past. Yeah, Marx had this famous line about how the traditions of past generations weigh like a nightmare on the brains of the living. And that's the frame here, that relying on the past isn't always about wisdom. Sometimes it's just a heavy, suffocating weight holding us back. And you can see exactly what that nightmare looks like in the age of AI. When our tech is just a mirror of the past, well, it bakes in all our existing biases. It can lead to value lock, basically freezing outdated, less inclusive values in place forever. It amplifies the voices that were already the loudest. And maybe worst of all, it makes it so much harder to break free and create something genuinely new. So the classic fear of the machine is taking over is kind of missing the point. The real threat here is a tyranny of our own past, a crystallized, biased, and inescapable version of our own history, given a single voice and a whole new kind of authority. But that brings up an even crazier question. What if the AI was perfect? I mean, what if we could strip out all the bias and it represented the best of our past? Is there still a risk? And the paper says, absolutely yes. And it might be the biggest risk of all. To get this, we have to talk about something called spiritual freedom,
a concept from the philosopher Martin Hägglund. It's basically the thing that makes us uniquely human, our ability to ask not just how to live, but why we should live that way. It's the freedom to choose our own purpose, to take huge risks, knowing we might totally fail. And the key ingredient for this freedom? Uncertainty.
Okay, let's make this real. Imagine an AI could tell you, with 98% certainty, that your marriage is going to bring you joy. I mean, you'd listen, right? Why wouldn't you? It's the rational thing to do if you want to be happy. But what do you lose when you say yes?
Well, you lose the one thing that makes the choice meaningful in the first place. The moment you outsource that decision to eliminate risk, you give up your freedom to make the choice yourself. The commitment, the leap of faith, the trust, it's all gone. The decision isn't really yours anymore.
And this gets at what the paper calls the certainty trap. It's this subtle process. It starts with a very human desire. We want to reduce the uncertainty in our lives. So what do? We ask the AI, this personified past, for the right answer. But in doing that, we hand over our spiritual freedom, our ability to choose for ourselves. And suddenly, we're treating the future as if it's already been decided.
And this isn't just some navel-gazing personal problem. That individual freedom, that ability to take a leap of faith and start something new, is the absolute foundation of our collective democratic freedom. It's our shared power to decide, together, what kind of world we want to create, without being chained to the past.
I mean, think about it. Modern democracy only really became possible once we got rid of the idea of an absolute authority, a king or a god, who had all the answers. The future suddenly became radically open, something we had to create. The danger now is that we could, completely by accident, reinstall that absolute authority, but this time, it's wearing the disguise of AI. Which really leaves us with this one final, incredibly important question. In our race to build these new gods that promise us certainty, that promise to take away the risks of being human, are we accidentally building a world where we're no longer truly free?